Okay, well, thank everybody for joining us today. We're in generation 4 of solar, and uh, it's time to take a look at the new generation of what's going on. We have 4 guests today. We have Michael Payne, Michael Hughes, Dean Walker, and Terry Summers. The first 3 all are from different uh, installers, which is not to say that they're the only 3 that exist. We talk about this if we need to, but it's a starting point. And but all these people are approved, are on the Oakmont contractor list, which means they've done multiple installations in Oakmont and generally gotten good reviews from them. Okay, I'll be introducing each individually. First, I have a short presentation I want to do. And my suggestion is, to the maximum extent, we hold questions for the end. Although if there's something that's a burning question in between, raise your hand or hit the up button if you're on Zoom, and we'll see what we got. Okay, we're there. Um, so there we go. So we start with the basics. Why solar? It's the right thing. It reduces your carbon footprint, and it is your contribution for improving the world for your children and grandchildren. And that's real. I often think, if we can't do it, where in the world are people going to do things like this? Okay. It's also often the right economic decision, particularly with the amazing increase in prices that's coming out of PG&E. And if you have a battery, it can be useful for your health, not to mention not having to put up with outages. So before 2024, if you had solar, you got paid for putting energy that came out of your roof back into PG&E grid. The change that happened last year, and they'll talk a little bit to this, the change that happened last year, now it's mostly what you save in your own home. The fact that you're not having to pay 45 cents or whatever per kilowatt hour because you've got your own energy source. And this is a rough graph of the prices at PG&E per kilowatt hour. So if we start back in 2015, we're looking at something like 20 cents. Right now, it's around 45 cents, and they've got a request for a 3% increase as of next month. And I am told that that is contractual. It has to do with their getting back costs that the PUC had always said that they could get back. Okay, it's a lot of money. Okay, there's a special condition that applies to a lot of people in Oakmont. In the electric system, there's a category called medical baseline. Medical baseline means that you need electricity for your health. Now, the obvious thing is something like oxygen, but less obvious is if you use a CPAP machine, that qualifies you. Okay, that gives you 2 things, one of which is you get a little discount on your PG&E bill. But for this purpose today, the more important thing is you can get a substantial reduction in a rebate for your battery. Okay. Our next door neighbor put in a large battery and ended up making money. The size of the rebate exceeded the cost of putting the battery in. Okay, these are our team members. I'm going to introduce Michael first. Okay. Mike Payne is from Synergy Solar. They are the company that put our system in, and we are very happy with them. He is the owner-operator He's been in the solar industry for 20 years. In 2003, he started as an installer and apprentice and worked himself up to leading the company. He has an electrical contracting license, a board certified electrical practitioner, etc. He's held every role in the company from installer, crew lead, project manager, sales, and design. So, Mike, why don't you take over? You tell me when you want the slides.
Thank you, George. All right. Is that good? Everybody hear me? All right. Hello, citizens of Oakmont and other folks in person and via Zoom. I am going off script because I have a lot to say and I don't want to miss it. Thank you for your interest in understanding the current state of solar. I also want to thank the other presenters here and George McKinney for making this event happen. There's been a lot of negative stories around California solar in the news lately. These stories are choosing to focus on one aspect and are not telling the whole story. Because of this, I reached out to George, who, as he said, we installed a system for in 2019 consisting of solar and energy storage, also known as a battery system. I asked if he could help me get the word out to the people in Oakmont around what has changed with the utilities, how that has changed the design of the system, and with rising utility costs, that solar still makes a lot of financial sense. Many of you probably know George and will not be surprised when I tell you that he said he would reserve the room and get the word out if I did the rest of the work to organize the presentation. So that's what I did. There are many reputable local installers, and I reached out to a couple who have previously participated with Synergy to educate here in Oakmont. I also invited our local expert from the pioneering Sonoma County Energy Independence Program, or SCEIP, SCEIP, who offers financing for solar and energy storage systems, among other things, using the property tax system. This is a great way to fund a system, and I use the program myself to do many energy efficiency upgrades on my own home. Any of the solar representatives here could have made this presentation alone. This was designed for each of us to present a different aspect to create a comprehensive presentation explaining what has changed, the most important parts of a current solar design, the savings of adding solar paired with energy storage today, and various ways to fund a system. It's true, changes in the utilities made last year changed how we design a system, but rooftop or distributed solar paired with energy storage still makes a lot of sense. One of the main reasons for the utility changes were to increase the adoption of energy storage batteries with a couple of goals. To reduce the strain on the grid during peak times when most power is being used, especially during summer months when folks are cooling their homes, and to reduce the strain on the grid that excess solar causes when exporting it back to the grid. Energy storage systems, or ESS, assist with both these issues. As an owner and operator of Synergy Solar, based in Sebastopol with over 20 years of experience, we wanted to continue to install solar, but in a responsible way. We also anticipated the utility changes, so started installing energy storage with all our solar installations, with few exceptions, back in 2019. When you use a battery to self-consume or peak shave the energy usage of your home, it not only reduces how much of the more expensive peak price electricity or energy you need to purchase from the utility, but also reduces the peak strain on the grid. The following day, your ESS will need to recharge with solar, which reduces the strain on the grid that spinning the meter backwards with excess solar causes. We are lucky to live in a place where a lot of households have adopted solar. And although this is good, many folks leave their homes to go to work, in school, and are gone in the middle of the day when their solar is producing the most energy. So the home is using less of it, with a lot of it being exported to the grid. This causes some issues for the grid, especially during high solar production times of the year. And we all know too well that the grid needs help. And having energy storage as part of your system is a great way to contribute. Under the new net billing tariff, also known as NEM 3, solar without energy storage does not make sense in most situations. What changed, as George had alluded to, is how the utility credits you to spin your meter backwards with your solar. Under the previous net energy metering or NEM programs, these credits used to be as valuable as what you would have bought the energy for and are now worth a fraction of that. Under NEM 1 and NEM 2, though for almost 30 years, solar designers in California have designed systems based on a year's worth of solar production and a year's worth of household energy consumption. If a system was designed well, it would produce more energy than you use during the summer months and spin the meter backwards, gaining credits, and produce less than you use in the winter months when you would then use those credits. This could result in an annual true-up bill that could be close to zero, other than some minimal monthly fixed charges. Now those credits are not very valuable most of the year, so a good design minimizes how much you're spinning the meter backwards. If you have energy storage, you can charge it with your excess solar during the day and discharge it to provide energy to your home during peak times and after the sun is not shining. This is programmed into the system and happens automatically, so you do not need to even think about it. There's a balance in sizing a system correctly, and an ESS is not going to be sized to store all of your excess solar summer energy to use during winter months. So some exporting is inevitable. Another thing that has changed in the design is what roofs are best to install the solar modules or panels on. In our region, south-facing roofs produce the most energy over the year, with west second, east next, and last north. With the goal of minimizing how much solar your house uses and minimizing spinning the meter backwards, putting solar modules on different facing roofs spreads out the production a little more and allows you to use more of your solar before sending it to the utility. Each site is unique and there is no one-size-fits-all design. Roofs are chosen based on shading issues and aesthetics, among other things. East-facing roofs are a great idea if you have a backup battery system, so the ESS can start recharging earlier in the day during grid outages. Other than the design of a system itself, homeowners can maximize savings by adjusting when they use energy. The more energy used directly from the solar, the better. If you have the flexibility to run the dishwasher, wash clothes with electric washer and dryer, charge your electric vehicle or bike, or many other things during the day when the sun is shining, you can optimize your solar investment. This can often be accomplished more easily by folks who are retired or work from home. And also, there are many newer appliances that have timers that can often be programmed to run during these optimum times. For this same reason, it is now more important for installers to get more detailed PG&E info from a homeowner to begin designing a system properly. A family household who all leave the home for school and work during the middle of the day have a different use pattern than folks who either work from home or are retired. This data is easily obtained if you have an online account with PG&E, as well as some other ways. With an energy storage system, there are two main options to choose from. A system designed to only help maximize bill savings, which is known as a grid-tied or savings battery system, and a backup system, which is designed to both maximize bill savings and provide backup power to your home when the grid is down, allowing you to use your solar investment instead of a gas or propane generator. There are many pieces of equipment, added labor, and usually a larger battery for a system that provides both bill savings and backup power. This makes these systems cost a little bit more than a savings battery system. Savings battery system will do what I described previously to maximize savings and reduce the strain on the grid, but will turn off when the grid is down, just like a solar system has always done without a backup energy storage system paired with it. In many cases, you can start with a grid-tied or savings system and add backup capability later. All ESS have two ratings. One is the capacity rating in kilowatt hours or kWh, and one is the power rating in kilowatts or kW. A good analogy with a car is the capacity is like the size of the fuel tank. It's the duration of time. And the power is like the horsepower of the engine, or how strong it can discharge power all at once to handle larger electrical loads, which is especially important for a backup use case. Why an ESS over generator for backup power? If you have the tax liability, you can claim the 30% federal tax credit on the installation costs. Once installed, there are no maintenance costs such as oil changes. There's no fuel costs. There's no fossil fuels being burned and no noxious fumes. And most importantly to many, they are quiet. Something to note is if you already have a solar system and that is under the current net energy metering rules, expanding an existing system by 10% or 1 kW will lose the system's grandfathering on the net energy metering program you are currently on. This grandfathering period is 20 years from when you are granted the permission to operate from the utility and could first turn your system on. In some cases, this may still be a good idea. If your current system is not covering most of your electricity costs, leaving you with a large annual true-up bill, or you plan to increase your electric usage by adding an electric vehicle or moving from gas to electric for household appliances or many other things. It is also very important to note that adding energy storage alone to an existing solar system has no effect on the existing system's grandfathering. So you can add an ESS to your existing solar system and enjoy the benefits of either a grid-tied savings system or a backup system with no loss to your current net energy metering agreement. As Synergy's whole sales team, I try to focus on education. As I've said, and will be elaborated here by others, solar paired with energy storage is a great way to fix utility costs, be resilient from future rate increases, and provide clean, quiet backup power source. It is also one of the great ways to lower your carbon footprint and help fight climate change. The more solar, the less gas or coal power plants will need to be kept online. In our area, we all know more than many the reality of wildfires. Solar paired with energy storage also reduces some of the main causes of wildfires by minimizing the need for long distance power distribution lines. All right, George, ready for some slides. So I've got a couple slides here just to kind of show what a typical solar production bell curve looks like and what these things we're talking about can do. So in the middle there, in the yellow, is a kind of a typical solar production bell curve. On the left is when people wake up in the morning and start getting ready to go to school and work, make breakfast, etc. in the purple. And over here is when people are home after school and work, usually making dinner and things like that. Turn the lights on. In the middle there on the bottom is the home's consumption that's covered by the solar. Next slide. This one shows moving some of those uses. If you can change some of your use patterns in the middle of the day, especially under the NEM 3 or net billing tariff, you can maximize the self-consumption by the solar in the middle. All right, next. This shows what more an east-west system will do. And when I was talking about putting panels on different facing roofs, typically we've always shot for a south-facing roof because that produces the most. But under the current system, to allow your house to self-consume more of the solar, if you put them on different roofs, it spreads out that bell curve, flattens it, and allows your home to use more. All right, last one. Okay, so this is basically what a solar battery does. It charges in the middle of the day and then can discharge it in the peak time in the evening. So you can maximize that investment. And this is how solar makes sense under the current net billing tariff. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Okay, we're going to move to Solarcraft. Michael Hughes will be our speaker. Michael supports energy storage project development at Solarcraft. He has extensive experience in residential solar energy and climate action and sustainability planning. He has a Bachelor of Science from Tufts School of Engineering. And for those who don't know, that's in the far eastern corner of the United States, known as Boston. And a Master of Science in Energy Policy from Johns Hopkins, and enjoys communicating with project owners on aspects of engineering feasibility, financial returns, and environmental benefits. Okay, Michael, it's all yours, and I run the slides. You tell me when you want one.
All right, thank you. So as was just mentioned, solar Can you hear me through? Yeah, there we go. All right, we're up close and personal. Is it coming through? All right, better. A little more gain on the mic. All right, so I'm going to start with a discussion on PG&E rates, because as we just talked about, solar has got great environmental benefits. It also has resilience benefits, having that battery in case the grid goes down. But it also has massive financial savings. So you all can save lots of money every year. And over the lifetime of these systems, 25-year warranted systems, you'll see how much money you'll be saving long term. So to start with PG&E rates, they've been going up and up. Everyone's noticing their bill more and more expensive. Well, the reason for that is in part because of all the wildfires. PG&E has had a hard time. You'll see here some headlines from a local publication showing 84 counts of involuntary manslaughter, many acres burned, buildings burned down. And at one point, the state passed legislation allowing that money be recouped through the ratepayer. So everyone's paying to cover that damage. So it's a great time to get that solar and storage and empower your home. This is a graph of the rates over time since 1999, when the energy cost was 10 cents per kilowatt hour. And you see now it's over 45 cents on average per kilowatt hour. For the tiered rate plans, that's a 239% increase over 25 years, or 8.5% annualized. On the time of use rate plans, which most people are on now, that's 144% increase over 10 years, or an average 10% increase every year. And as I mentioned, we're all seeing that on our bills. So for even a modest home that's paying only $4,000 a year, thanks, on energy, 25 years from now, even at the modest 7.5% escalation, which is less than what it's done recently, that's over almost $300,000 in lifetime energy payments. At 10%, that's over $400,000, and at 12.5%, which is very possible, escalation of rates, you're looking at over $650,000. So many good uses for that amount of money, rather than paying the utility company. So in order to determine what works on a house, we'll come out and we'll evaluate the roof, evaluate the electrical panel, see where in the home we can place the batteries. And you'll see here on the next slide a photo of a battery system on a wall. We generally only need about 4 to 6 feet of clear space. And here's a photo coming up next of an electrical panel, an old meter. We see just about everything. So sometimes the panel is really old and it needs to get replaced. More often than not, we can work with what you have at your home. If you're adding appliances, a heat pump or an EV charger or other large loads, and you want to go from say 100 amps to 200 amps, a solar company or a third-party electrician can do that main panel upgrade and service upgrade for you. This is a look at the 3D modeling software that we use to calculate the production and financial savings. So we'll model the trees. This is a example home in the Oakmont area, great south-facing roof. See bright yellow, tons of solar access. So I've got 18 panels, which is a good average size system for a home of this size. Next slide. Again, another photo of the battery system. This is just one manufacturer, but all the batteries out now are pretty sleek. They only come 7 inches off the wall, so they don't take up too much space. They have a pretty nice design to them. And on the right, the metrics for this particular system, 18 panels. Each panel is 410 watts. So 18 times 410, you get 7,380 watts, or 7.38 kilowatts. And a system of this size is going to produce 11,769 kilowatt hours per year, approximately. Now, this home I have as consuming 13,200 kilowatt hours per year, about 1,100 kilowatt hours per month. And that'll give you 89% consumption offset. So the solar annually is producing a little less than what you consume, and that's ideal. Typically around 75% to 90% of that consumption offset means you won't be producing excess solar in the summer when you don't need it, and the utility won't pay you much for it. But that will still give you a 86% reduction in your utility bill. So every month you'll be paying 86% less than you otherwise would. So this slide here, you see in the upper left, $530 per month. That's what this average home would have to pay to PG&E. After solar, that 86% bill reduction, your new PG&E bill is only $72. So that $459 you're saving every single month. And over 25-year life of this system, that's $330,000 of lifetime savings. There's an upfront cost if you're paying cash for the system. So net, it's over $296,000 that this system saves. And the chart shows that for this home, utility bill of $6,371 per year over time, and this is a 8.5% rate escalation shown here. Year 25, it's over $35,000 annual payments. So 5.25 year simple payback period. That means just over 5 years, all those avoided payments have recouped your investment in the system. 35% annualized return on investment, ROI. It's very difficult to get that rate of return in any other investment or asset class. So that's a really good investment. Next slide. This we covered already, so I'll just mention this. If you want to dive into the details on how the system's functioning, you certainly can. This shows in blue the solar production over the course of a day. Midday, it's producing more. And then the red is your load curve, as we talked about. Morning and evening have that peak. The green is your battery discharging after it's stored all of that solar energy. So the yellow line then is the net of what you need to draw from the grid. And in the winter time is really the main time you'll need to get a little extra energy from the grid. Next slide. But if you don't want to dive too deep, most manufacturers provide the monitoring platform. So after your install, you can see what your home's doing in simple terms, when the solar is producing, when the battery is charging or discharging, when you're on and off the grid. Next slide. So one more chart for you here, and this is showing production monthly throughout the year. And this particular system, it is producing a little bit more in the summer. The home is consuming. So the blue is the solar and the red is the home's consumption. So what we'll generally do is back that off so you're not producing much excess in the summer, or only a little if you're planning on increasing your energy loads over time. Next. So getting down to the actual numbers and how that breaks down, this system, 18 panels, it's costing just over $27,000. The batteries costing just over $20,000. So you're looking at about $48,000 investment. Now, those that are eligible for the tax credit can get a 30% federal income tax credit. That's over $14,000 in a project this size, which reduces the net investment to just over $33,000. We'll hear about loans next, but you can also finance that, not have to go out of pocket, and your monthly premium will be close to what you're paying for your PG&E bill anyway. So in closing, a few photos of recent installs that Solarcraft did, and solar can be installed in almost all roof types. This is a flat foam roof. Next slide shows a comp shingle roof, a more typical roof, but this homeowner wanted to make sure we hid the conduit to maintain the aesthetic, and we can put conduit through an attic, a crawl space, or otherwise hide it. If needed, you can paint to match your trim. That's all.
Thank you. Okay. So the last installer is Dean Walker. Dean's from Simply Solar. He's worked for as a solar energy consultant for 5 years. He has his degrees from Sonoma State and has worked in the green business for over 30 years. We talked a lot about it before this thing started. Um, uh, Dean?
Okay, check. Can everyone hear me? All right. I've been given the the responsibility to talk about the less fun stuff. These two guys had the stuff that I really enjoy to talk about. Now I'm going to talk about a couple things that I'm not always excited about, especially when it comes to power purchase agreements, which is generally something that most solar installers that are local do not recommend. And Simply Solar has not recommended 20 and 25-year power purchase agreements or leases. In our 10 years under the brand Simply Solar and 20 plus years of doing solar in the Sonoma County area. The reason why, first, that we don't recommend power purchase agreements is because, one, it does not add any value to your home. You're going to be locked into a 20-year lease in which they put a lien on the equipment, and then they're going to sell back that power to you and raise the rates over the course of that 20 years at about 2 or 3, if you look, percent annually. So if you look at a lot of the national companies, most of them are promoting these 20 and 25-year power purchase agreements. Now, who would be maybe a good candidate for that would be someone who doesn't have the federal tax liability. So they've retired, they're not drawing any money from any savings accounts, they're not paying the government anything, and so they're not eligible for that 30% tax credit because they have not paid any taxes that they can offset that with. Recently, Simply Solar, about 6 months ago, has entered into an agreement for a 6-year short-term PPA, not these 20 and 25-year PPAs. It still puts a lien on the house, but it is a prepaid lien. And so it is essentially like owning the system. If you were to sell the system with these short-term 6-year PPAs, it will not, it will add value to the property as opposed to take away from the value of the property. You'll notice that the state has a document called the California Solar Consumer Protection Guide. And inside the California Solar Protection Guide, they explain the differences between power purchase agreements, leases, PACE loans like Skype, and then going to other lenders, major banks, or then paying in cash. The most advantageous has always been to go pay in cash or to go to a loan, especially if there's very little dealer fees related to those loans. An organization like Skype is probably in Sonoma County, the best way to finance your system. But if you don't have that advantage of the 30% tax credit, and I've sent Skype quite a few little contracts in the last month or so, probably about 6 or so I'm close to now. So there are a lot of people that could take advantage of these Skype loans, and Terry will talk about that. That's her job. But I'm talking about the HDM Capital. Did you get a slide for that? Yeah. Because there is a group of people in this room who do not have the federal tax liability. And I'm going to explain real quickly how the HDM Capital may be an avenue for reducing the amount of out-of-pocket. What HDM Capital is a national bank, a financial institution, actually. And because they are a financial institution, they have a different set of tax advantages that the residential homeowner does not. And so what they are interested in is your 30% tax credit. And if you can't take advantage of that 30% tax credit, you could use that 30% tax credit, that 30% that you would have had if you had the tax liability, and you can use it as a payment for HDM Capital. And in return, they will pay you back about 30 or 31%. So how it works is you sell your 30% tax credit to them. they put a value on the solar system that is greater than what a normal resident would be able to do. They are able to both sell that 30% tax credit to some other institution and also depreciate the value of the solar system for 6 years and also rate it at a higher rate. And so there's a lot of profit for these financial institutions to buy these 30% tax credits. They then share a portion of that benefit with the homeowner. So let's say you had a solar system in which it was a $30,000 system and you could get back a $9,000 federal tax credit, but you don't pay any federal taxes, so you're not going to get it back. If you sell that $9,000 to HDM Capital, they would in return provide a discount of maybe $10,000 on that solar system. And so your $30,000 system will become a $20,000 system that you would have to then pay us for. This is how you can get that 30% tax credit still from a solar system. But here's the rub. The HDM Capital is going to own the system on paper for 6 years. After the 6 years, they will send you a memorandum of understanding, which says that you then own the system and all of the service warranties that is entailed in that contract would then just be transferred over to Simply Solar or whoever the solar company is. And it will continue on for 25 years. Everything is transferred immediately after the 6 years. Does that kind of make sense, or have I confused everyone in this room all of a sudden?
We'll get a chance for all questions after Terry finishes her talk.
That sounds good. So a couple of the takeaways from the HDM Capital system. One is that the homeowner ends up paying about 30% less for the solar system, but HDM is going to take on the ownership for the 6 years before they pass it on. They only put a lien on, it's what they call a UCC filing. So they only put a lien on the equipment. It doesn't affect the property in any way. It's a short term and it automatically gets transferred over to the homeowner. There are no monthly payments to HDM. Your payment is that 30% tax credit that you have. It will not affect the value of the home. In fact, it'll be considered as if the homeowner is still owning the system. So you could add maybe $6,000 per kilowatt hour plus the cost of the battery if you were to sell the home. And so it's considered essentially you've already 100% paid for it. It is great for the folks that don't pay federal taxes anymore. It's the only reason why I'm presenting that in here. Otherwise, I would recommend you go straight to Terry in this area. I also recommend Redwood Credit Union, but Terry has actually the best rates right now in the industry in this area. So I'm giving you lots of credit here because I really believe in the program that she's about to offer. So that is the HDM component. I was also asked to talk about the SGIP rebate. And so we can go real quickly now to the SGIP rebate. You can see on the side over there, it says equity resiliency. That's the one that most people would qualify for. There are a couple things there is a primary qualifier and a secondary qualifier in this program, but what SGIP stands for is Self-Generation Incentive Program. It comes from the state of California. California often feeds the funds for that in little spurts. And last year, the funds had run out. However, this year, California has funded PG&E with $3.35 million this last month for PG&E customers to get this benefit. If you read on the column here, there's the two, I'm going to read to you essentially the qualifiers. The primary qualifier first is that you have to have either 2 public safety power shutoffs in the previous 12 months, or you live in a tier 2, tier 3 fire threat zone. The CPUC provides a map of that fire threat zone, and I have looked at the entire Oakmont area, and I will say that about 50% of the people who live in Oakmont will be eligible because their homes land in a tier 2, tier 3 fire threat zone for that primary qualifier. However, though, you still need a secondary qualifier, and that's the and one of the following additional criteria there. And primarily the people who live in the Oakmont will qualify through either a medical baseline, and we've talked a little bit about that. A CPAP machine could qualify, for example, or they have some kind of serious illness that would qualify. And then on and off, this is the weird thing, you will find that the electric well pump qualifies or doesn't qualify depending on the day. And so that is kind of an interesting little element to it. If you read the details of applying for the SGIP rebate, you can go online and you can find the application has a 120-page booklet to understanding the process of applying for this rebate. That is mind-boggling, right? Who's going to read 120 pages to understand how to apply for a loan? But here's the deal. SGIP in the state will pay anywhere between $850 to $1,000 per kilowatt hour for this. And so if you had for example, a 10 kilowatt battery and it cost about $11,000, that 10 kilowatt battery would discharge at peak output would be about, what's the term I'm using for the amount that you can actually discharge every single day on a 10 kilowatt battery might be like 9.6 kilowatts peak, the output total. And that's what they'll give you is like $9,600 for a $11,000 battery. 10 kilowatt battery. That's a significant amount. And so someone had said that they had, George, you had mentioned that there was someone who had practically their entire battery paid for by the state. This is how they did that. If you had two batteries, I've seen clients of mine get as much almost as $18,000 for two batteries, for example. So that's a very significant thing. Now, if you read that handbook of 120 pages, they do recommend that you use a director to apply for this application, as opposed to you trying to maneuver all of the applications and filing with the different jurisdictions that are involved in this program. We use a third party, and maybe some of you guys do as well, called Your Solar Mate. They only work with licensed solar installers like Simply Solar and these two organizations as well. And I recommend that you go through your solar company and ask them to bring in a third party to work as a director for you. They typically will charge, depending on the size of the system, it's a floating scale, between $1,000 and $1,500. But as I just mentioned, you could get $9,000 plus on a single 10 kilowatt battery. So it's a really good investment for you. That's pretty much what I have to say about the two programs. I hope I didn't confuse any of you. And if not, I'll clarify it in the question and answer period.
There's a lot here, and I plan to give a very quick summary after Terry. So our last speaker is Terry Summers. Terry has as her primary credential that she happened to be responsible for the giant maypole on the lawn of Berger as an Oakmont resident. But in her spare time, she manages the Sonoma County Energy Independence Program. Terry, why don't you tell me about it?
Okay, so I love my job. I truly love my job. I wouldn't be 67 years old and going to work every day if I didn't love my job. So the county's program is, I think, lovely because it's not income qualified. So it doesn't matter what your source of income is. It's not income qualified. It's based on the fair market value of your home. So we all know that in this area, there's very few homes under $400,000, right? So that would mean that if you had one of those $400,000 homes, you could qualify for lending up to $40,000 because it's up to 10% of the fair market value of your home. So we don't pull income, we don't pull credit because that's not our qualifier. The program was designed in such a way that we just look at fair market value, and then we take you to a place where we really are assured that you can continue to pay your property tax bill with any additional assessment to pay back the Skype funding. So property tax assessment based financing sounds really crazy, but it's actually pretty easy because your tax bill comes and one of the line items is just like anything like a school tax. It just says Skype and it has an 800 number next to it, or you can always call my office, which many people do all the time. And I'm happy to answer questions for people, but it looks like a line item on your tax roll because it is. It's split up like every other tax on your tax bill. It's split in equal installments, 2. So that total tax liability is increased by, say, if you're borrowing $40,000, I don't even know what the number is off the top of my head, but it's like $3,700 or something a year. So your property tax bill would increase by that amount, but you're not paying a monthly payment because you can't pay your taxes monthly, right? You can pay twice a year. And if your taxes happen to be paid through your mortgage lender in an impound account, they will then give you a monthly dollar amount that you'd be looking at an increase on your tax roll for, because they're going to save it for you and then pay it for you later. So that's how Skype works. And our current rate is 7.49%. And we all kind of go, oh, well, what about those 2% rates we were having for mortgage loans, which we all should have taken advantage of. And if you didn't, shame on you, because that'll never come around again. But you'll never refinance your home either. So if you've got one of those rates, because I feel that way about my own. But if you added a Skype assessment, you're not looking at, it's kind of mindless in some ways because we all know we're going to pay our property tax bill. It goes on the property tax roll. We all take advantage of taking a write-off for our property tax amounts as well. And your tax preparer might want to take advantage of the interest rate that you're paying, the interest that you're paying on that assessment as well as a write-off. So that's between you and your tax collector. I don't do taxes. So it would be something you would ask them about. And the other thing about is we're talking solar today and battery storage and possibly a main service panel upgrade. That all goes on one Skype application as one loan if you wanted it to, and you could choose your term, 10 years or 20 years. But it's a fixed interest rate that doesn't change over the period of that time. So it's going to stay at that 7.49 for 20 years. And the interest rate, I want to tell you real quickly, is not based on the mortgage lending rate. It's based on the 5-year Treasury note. Because we are a county program, we don't get funds from the general fund of the county. We self-sustain off of the loans that we are allowed to produce for these individuals that come into the office and take, and 4% of interest goes back to the program. So the staff that work on Skype applications, myself, and 4 other people in our office, we all get paid under that 4% interest rate because the county's not paying our salaries. So we're using that 4% of the interest. The other 3.49 goes back into the Treasury for reinvestment for other programs that the county offers individuals within the county. So it's county funded with a big bucket of money, $100 million. And it just keeps being loaned out and paid back and loaned out. And we've funded in excess of $105 million in Sonoma County worth of improvements through this program. And I'm really proud because our default or delinquency rate is far less than that of just a normal taxpayer that hasn't taken advantage of doing a Skype assessment. So I'm pretty proud of that. And so one more thing, there's over 130 improvements, not just solar, that can be funded through Skype. It could be, maybe you're going to electrify your entire house. You're just going to get that whole house under that electric category, and you're going to use your solar to generate enough power to pay for everything. So heat pumps can be paid for out of Skype, financed. Energy efficiencies all across the board. Any kind of HVAC system that's high energy efficiency that qualifies under the program could be financed. But everybody's really focused on heat pumps right now. You can also do EV chargers as long as they're hardwired in. There's a lot of different things to look at when you're starting this electrification process, because you're going to size your system according to your desires. So it's that shoot for the moon, land in the stars kind of thing, you know, where you want to talk to your solar provider about what you're going to do, or whoever's creating a proposal for you. Because if you're going to buy an EV and you want a charger in your garage, you're going to have to plan for that. If you're going to change over to a heat pump system, because the codes are going to require that you change to electric heating instead of gas, you're going to want to plan for that when you're doing your system design. The only other thing I want to touch on is the fact that in our program, we also have a lot of free workshops and education that's paid for out of the Skype budgets. And that is that we offer classes on a weekly basis, typically on Wednesdays. They're recorded. You can call the office, and I have cards back in the bag. You can call the office and we can send you a link to any kind of workshop that we've presented. And they're all about, you know, how to improve your footprint, really, how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in this community, and just how to be a climate saver, really, just like do the right thing. And you can learn a lot in these webinars. So I encourage you to look at that. We also, George knows this very well, and I'm going to do a little precursor. We don't require that everybody do a Skype solar consultation in our office before you put a solar system on your home. These guys know what they're doing. They do a great job designing systems. Our office would offer to look at some bids with you and say, this is an apple and this is an apple. Oh, this is an orange and this one, and proposed a pear. So we would look at it and help you look at a proposal if you wanted us to help you figure out what you're really getting and how to compare those fairly. And we'll do that for almost any project that you're working on that's an energy efficiency, even if it's heating and that type of thing. Okay?
Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
Okay, so just to finish up here for a second, a reminder that if you're at Oakmont, you have a process to go through, which means once you get to the decision that you're actually going to do something, you get a proposal, you have to get it approved if by the OVA architectural office, and if you're part of a sub HOA like I am, okay, they got to approve it too. And if you're part of a duplex, triplex, you need to talk to the other people in that group as well. Now, what we've been talking about is two things. First, you can get an awfully good return if you get a system sized correctly with a battery. Okay. When you look at the returns here, they swamp the return that you can get if you, in fact, simply have money sitting in a CD. But you have to think about that. Secondly, these systems are financeable. I know to some extent you were hearing a range of things, not all of which made sense at the moment. But if you, in talking to your installer, make it clear what you need to get, in other words, what your particular problem is, or particular financial situation is, they can help you deal with it. So those are the two things I would say to start with. And we've sort of brushed over it a couple of times, but there is a 30% tax credit on any of these systems. Okay, do we have questions?
I can be kind of loud.
Don't hear you on here.
Okay, Terry, question for clarification. Did I understand you right that the $3,700 or whatever it's borrowed that appears on your county tax bill is federally tax deductible?
So remember, I said I'm not a tax preparer, but a lot of people, we all write off part of our property tax bill already, right? So
All of it if you can.
if you can, And if you have some leeway in there and you've added a Skype assessment, depending on how your tax preparer prepares your statements, some of them are taking that tax advantage on people's property tax bills. We don't tell them they should or could because that's up to their tax preparer. But we've heard many people that have told us that that's what they're doing. Don't know how that works.
Okay, thanks, George. So I think this is for middle Mike. Mike, those ROIs you were showing, were they computed off of NEM 3 only?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Okay. And can you clarify, or any of you gentlemen, the benchmark now, if you're in NEM 2 and you want to add some panels, I have 10 panels. My understanding is you can add 10 kW, but you can't do 2 without going into NEM 3. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's 10% or more will bump you out of NEM 2. So
10% or
for
more.
most systems that are 10 panels, that's a one panel addition is what you're limited to, which is not very useful. So it was designed so that if there was some issue, you needed to replace the panels and they had slightly different wattages for a newer brand, you could do that. But it wasn't designed so that you could actually expand your system. There is some talk about doing an addition that's non-export. So your original system is exporting to the grid, and there's a power control system that doesn't export all the new panels energy to the grid. And they're working through the technology and underwriting to get that. So eventually that's coming. But right now you're limited, and we want to stay on M2 with what you have.
And Terry, some of the things you have listed, you said gobs of other things. Does that include windows and doors if you've electrified your house? Okay. Great. Okay, super. Thank you, John.
And just to finish with, if you have an existing system without a battery, the battery is completely free. You can install it, you get your 30% tax credit. There are no impacts on your NEM 2. Okay, any other questions from this group? Okay.
So one more wrinkle on what George just mentioned. NEM2 system, no battery. Does adding the battery really do anything for me? Because I'm still looking at the net usage over the course of the year, correct?
Yeah, so under a NEM 1 or NEM 2 system, adding a battery, not a huge money saver. It depends on how much of your net usage is during peak, but that's what we're talking, maybe a few $100s a year or something like that. It's more about the backup use case under NEM 1 and NEM 2.
Thank you. Another question from the SGIP slide. Above the paragraph that mentioned the medical baseline was a paragraph that talked about being in a multifamily or single family with sale restrictions. Does our 55 over community qualify us for that? Does that have anything to do with that?
That's
No.
a different category.
It's different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me. I have a couple questions. First of all, I'm on First Fairway of the Sugarloaf course. I get a fair number of golf ball hits on my roof. I don't have a solar system yet. My neighbor put in a solar system and put a cage over it, a wire frame to protect it from golf balls. If you were on the First Fairway, would you do what he did? Are there some solar panels that are more proof against golf ball hits? I know they usually talk about hailstone hits, but more or less the same thing, I guess. And then I have one more question that's totally different, kind of. But again, answer the first one first.
Yeah, so I'll just say in my 20 years installing in Sonoma County, we've installed a lot in Bodega Bay. And of the 2 panels that we've lost, one of them was from golf balls and the other was from somebody mowing the lawn in kicking a rock into a ground mount system. I got approached by those folks who sell those screens, those cages. And my thought on those is that if you're going to put a cage over your system, it's going to degrade the output. And I would rather have that output over the lifetime and roll the dice and maybe need to replace a panel versus stunt my system.
Yeah. So you do it without the cage.
Absolutely.
Okay. One other thing, and that is I've been sort of a little teed off by the rate increases and how they're making it more charging you a lot, even though you're not getting much in terms of grid interconnect. It has occurred to me that one could do an off-grid system. Is it possible within, and if you're not off somewhere on a farm, is it possible to just say, I want to be off the grid. I'm going to put lots of panels and lots of batteries.
Yeah, so it is possible and is badly in help that our grid is needed. It's still better to be grid tied. It really is. It's just an off-grid system, like you'd find out in Cazadero, is inherently inefficient because you need to design it for the worst possible solar production day of the year, matched with the biggest consumption. So inherently, they're kind of inefficient, and it's generally not a great idea unless you truly are off-grid. Yeah.
And if you do go off grid, you really want some additional redundancy. So possibly a way of regenerating those batteries and stuff. So now you're back to a generator. That's the only way it would really kind of make sense when we do off grid projects. You're really looking at, generator on top of the solar just to get you through. You're also looking at a very efficient home that uses very little. You can't have like 1,000 kilowatt hours and be off grid. You need a home that's going to be like 350 to 400 kilowatt hours per year to really make sense.
Okay, this is our first winter here, and we're appalled by our PG&E bill. And this question might be something that's more appropriate for offline. It's just that I'm really ignorant. And so when we get our bill and it's like $500 and we have a fairly small house, and you have like 120, 130 is electric, and then the rest is natural gas. This isn't going to impact the entire bill, it just impact the electric portion, correct?
That's correct, just the electricity portion.
Yeah, well, I got my hopes up when you were talking about an average at $530.
We work on the E part, not the G part of PG&E.
That said, some people are converting.
You'll want to keep your eyes on what's called a heat pump. Okay, a heat pump is an all-electric system that is substantially more efficient than a gas system. Okay, but one of the reasons for doing the solar is you need the electricity for the heat pump, but if you make your own, that is just one step up. And then Terry would be glad to tell you that if you want financing help, she'll throw the heat pump in with the solar.
And if you're thinking about getting a heat pump and solar, you should talk to your solar consultants because we can factor in future use when we sell you the solar system. So that we would ask you a series of questions about how often you use it and whether you're using AC and things like that. But we can then put in the type of heat pump or, and the amount of hours that you're going to be running it, and then factor that into our total solar system so that we can price it out for you.
Thank you.
We have a 20-year-old roof. Okay, it doesn't leak. We weren't planning on changing it right away. If you put a system on top of that roof, then when it's time for the roof to be changed, you have to take the whole system off and then re-put it back on. Correct? Okay. What kind of cost What does that cost to do?
Well, that's going to depend on the solar contractor. And I don't know what other companies offer, so I'm going to just speak about my own company for a second. We have a one-time free remove and reinstall of the solar system that begins on year 3 and ends on year 10. Most 20-year roofs, if it's a GAF certified Master Elite installed roof, you're looking at a 40 or 50-year warranty on the product itself. So you may have a 30-year life still on, or maybe 20 more years life on that roof, possibly. But if you think that within the next 10 years that your roof is going to be compromised and you'll need to redo it, then you'll want to find, a solar installer that would allow that kind of remove and reinstall of the solar system in their contract.
So 10 years. So like you said, it could go on for another 20 years, but 10 years is where you
We
draw the line on it.
That's right. And there's also a little stipulation in there that says, let's say you go from a comp shingle roof to a metal roof, for example. When we remove the solar panels, you change it to a metal, we start putting it back on. If you're using different brackets and stanchions and things like that, then you'll be paying for that, but you won't be paying for the labor or anything like that.
When one of you would install the system, would you evaluate the condition of the roof at the time and advise on what to do?
Yeah, we do that.
And is there damage to a roof in installing? Does it put more wear and tear on it, or?
It does put some wear on it, but generally if your roof is in good condition, that's not a problem. Only if the roof is already in really poor condition, would you have to be concerned, and we would make a recommendation that you fix any areas that are really worn or get a roof replacement.
Okay.
But for customers that are kind of in your situation, we've had those before, and we'll just give a reasonable price per panel for taking them down and putting them back up. So if you're in that spot, we'll give you a quote for what it might cost.
Great.
Okay, I'm going to give the folks on Zoom one chance at seeing input, and then after this, we'll let you talk to the gentleman at the front table, and Terry, if you want to. Does anybody on Zoom want to speak? If they do, unmute yourself and feel free to ask your question. Okay, that looks like it. Thank you so much. I understand this is a complicated area, okay? But do you have a final comment you want to make? Okay, Sue has a system on a triplex. So I thought she might take a moment on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to encourage people not to be discouraged if you're told in triplex that it's impossible to put solar on it. It is not. So in my sub HOA, two triplexes have solar just on one unit, but the roof line is clearly designated as to which is your roof, even if you're in the triplex pair that share a wall. It's very, very, very clear. So I just want to encourage you not to think about it, because it is saving me money. And in my last PG&E bill, since this was put on in May, my total bill for electricity over all those months is $90. And so it's 90 for what is that? I don't know how many months it is, but and it's right on my PG&E bill each time, so I can see that. And then the true up thing that which I don't truly understand, but I don't owe anything so far, so that's good, because I've known people that pay up quite a little bit at that period of time, a year later after installation. I don't really understand it, but George can explain it completely, I am sure.
I could, but I won't. Okay, we'll break now, and if anybody has a question for one of the installers or Terry, please feel free to bring it up. Generally, the idea here is if you're even close to a decision, get an installer in to talk with you, because that will get you started to understand the process better. And there's no question, if anybody doesn't understand what's happening to electric rates, they haven't lived through the last 3 years And the next few years are not going to be that much kinder to us either. Okay. Take care and thank you all for joining us.